On bended knee is no way to be free.
So last week on July 6th, a man was shot in the Netherlands by the name of Peter de Vries. That's how you would pronounce it in Dutch. So perhaps for you Americans it would be something like Peter R. de Vries. And he was a crime journalist from the Netherlands. And he was pretty famous for doing what he did in his own way. So he would mostly focus on unsolved murder cases and help families out to figure out what happened to their loved ones and who was responsible, to find who the real perpetrator was of these crimes. He focused his attention on that for the last 3 decades of his life, as far as I know. And usually it would go alright. Now he would also involve himself in cases that would be a little more dark and risky, where the crime and the perpetrators in question would potentially be very dangerous people or connected to very dangerous individuals that most average people would not want to be confronted by. But as a journalist, he would just dive in there and figure out the stories of what would happen, what murders would occur, who was responsible. Again, no matter their background, no matter how dangerous they would be, he would still dedicate himself to figuring out the truth and to share it, to bring it to light, so that people can know about the truth. Now, ultimately, this attitude got him killed. That's the really tragic part about it. Now, you might be wondering, how did he die? What exactly happened? Well, as I said, on July 6th, he was on television, which he made a regular appearance on one of the Dutch television shows over here. I don't know exactly how many times he would be there, maybe weekly, I don't know, I don't actually pay attention to it all that much, but essentially it was on a television show, and then when they were done shooting it, he was going home, or at least first he left the building to watch his car, to then of course probably go home or something. But as he was walking to watch his car, after leaving the studio, somebody came up to him and shot him. And apparently they shot him right through the head. I don't know if he was hit in other places of his body, because the perpetrator fired 5 bullets at him, but at least 1 bullet hit him straight in the skull, which didn't kill him instantly. They were able to keep him alive for about a week, but after a week of being in a coma, they sadly had to let him go. I guess he was not able to wake up again. And if he was able to wake up, there's another question that always has to be kept in mind, is what state would the person be in? They might be severely disabled if you got brain trauma of that nature. So at the end of the day, perhaps if that would have been the case, then dying is almost better, because especially due to the nature of his work, he just couldn't afford being disabled for life, potentially. So I don't know the exact details, of course, but that is essentially what happened to him. And who killed him? Where did it come from? Well, rumor has it that it has something to do with one of the people that he was supposed to help out to testify in court. So it's kind of difficult for me to translate all of this from the top of my head, but basically there's this whole crime syndicate going on, and he was involved in that as well in order to help certain people out with their court appearances. And of course, this crime syndicate didn't really like that he was involved. This happens all the time globally in general, where if you don't watch out, certain people, certain groups of people, they might really take you out if they realize that you might be, trouble for them, might get them arrested or might get them harsher sentences in jail and stuff like that. That's basically what he was involved in the final, time of his life. And sadly it got him fatal, and he wasn't the only one. I think there were 2 more people that were also executed that were involved in the same case. I think it was a lawyer and maybe somebody else also, that literally got brutally murdered in front of their homes for being involved in this case, for wanting to help other people testify in court. It's stuff of this nature that ultimately got this journalist murdered. It's absolutely tragic and disturbing to realize that this is possible, that this can happen. As a journalist, if you're trying to get the truth to light, to help the innocent out there that are suffering. Now, there's something about this man that is actually pretty interesting to share, especially for people that didn't realize I used to have a different channel called CreepyNews 1.0. I call this one 2.0, but 1.0 was a lot bigger than this currently is. But for a long time as a child, I would watch Peter R. Vries documentaries about missing people and about unsolved murders. So as a child, now it might sound a little crazy to watch stuff like that as a child, but I would watch that because it was very interesting and also, I guess, a little scary at the time for me, making it almost like a horror movie, even though it was about real situations and real people. So I grew up with watching his shows, and now he's gone, which again is sad. I hope he's resting in peace, and I wish the family much strength in this hard time for losing your father in this manner. But ultimately, in a way, I guess subconsciously, he might have been sort of like an inspiration for my previous channel in a way as well, where I too thought it would be interesting to share obscure unsolved cases. But of course, the huge difference between me and him and other actual journalists out there is that I don't go out to interview people and to visit crime scenes and to really dig deep into police files and with the intent of finding the actual perpetrator or perhaps the body of someone that vanished if they're not alive anymore. That's how far he would go as a real journalist. So for me, I'm just a content creator online. But I guess creating the show the way I did, again, was a little inspired by him, I'm not gonna deny. So I figured I'd just share that with you today, that some tragedy occurred in the Netherlands, and this time it wasn't just some random person that was brutally killed. It was someone with a purpose, with a mission, that should not have been killed at all to begin with. He dedicated his time to helping families out to find the truth and to bring closure to them that really needed it. But sadly, someone got it in their minds, or a group of people most likely got it in their minds, that it would be a good idea to get rid of him, literally. So perhaps you might be familiar with the case Natalie Holloway that also was murdered and vanished somewhere in the 2000s, and the suspect was a guy by the name of Joran van der Sloot, which was a Dutch guy. Peter R. Vries got involved in it and actually got Joran to admit on hidden camera that he was indeed involved in the disappearance of Natalie Holloway. But of course, to the police he would lie about that, and in the media he would lie about it. He would always have this facade going on that he would be innocent and stuff like that, but it was this Dutch crime journalist, Peter, that managed to get him to at least catch him on his lies. So you see, he was involved in international cases as well. Absolutely fascinating for a Dutch journalist to go that far. And the mother of Natalie, I guess she was really thankful for his help, for obvious reasons. But again, it is pretty tricky to talk about this because ultimately it's just such a sad situation. If you think about the families that he helped and that he was still intending to help, that he can now no longer help due to not being here anymore. It's just, it really makes you at a loss of words, where you're like, in what fucking world does it make sense that someone like him, of all people, should be murdered? Like, it doesn't. And I know for all victims out there of unsolved murders and other crimes, of course nobody really deserves it. In some cases you might say, well, he did deserve it, or she did deserve it because of this or that, because they were involved in shady things, etc., gang related. Yes, this does happen, and then you might sort of reason like this. But in the case of this journalist and many others out there, none of that actually is the case. Like, there's no really details where you could be like, from this angle it made sense that he died or that he deserved to die. No, there's none of that. That's such a sad part about it. So I guess at the end of the day, all we can say is, I hope the victim is resting in peace. And I'm sure his work will be remembered by many people for a long time to come, because he really dedicated himself to the truth in such a way that it could help bring closure to families that so desperately need it.